Hi, welcome to Checking In with Amy. I'm delighted to see you again. I want to tell you a little bit about the Elder Service Plan. It's a program for all-inclusive care for the elderly, and by that I mean people who are 55 years of age and older who need help in their home. We service the communities of East Boston, Chelsea, Revere Winthrop, and Everett, and now we've expanded our services to Malden, Medford, Melrose, Stoneham, and Boston's North End. So we've doubled our catchment area. Today we're going to talk about caregiving. Our campaign for this month is to reach out to all the caregivers. We know that there are a lot of them and try to help them. My guests today are Amanda Parada, who's a licensed independent clinical social worker. Welcome.
Thank you.
And Mary Maxine Mello, who is a dementia specialist, who's been on my show before, actually.
I have.
Yeah. So thank you for both coming.
We're
I
happy
appreciate.
to be here.
Yes.
Thank you. So let's start out by saying, what comes to your mind when you think of caregiving?
Well, there are two things that come immediately to my mind, Amy. Number one is Alzheimer's disease and related dementias, and the other is the unpaid caregiver. Unpaid caregivers are family and friends of persons with Alzheimer's disease or related dementia that actually take care of their family member at home. The Alzheimer's report showed in 2015 that there were over 5 million Americans living with Alzheimer's disease or related dementias. And by the year 2050, that number is expected to reach 16 million. And it will be a cost of $1.1 trillion to our healthcare system.
Unbelievable. So are there a lot of unpaid caregivers today?
Well, let me give you some other facts and figures. In 2014, the family and friends of persons with dementia provided 17.9 billion hours of unpaid care. That's a contribution to our country of $217.7 billion. So that fact alone speaks volumes for the unpaid caregiver. But I have a slide that shows some statistics if you want to take a look at that.
Yes, that would be great.
The Alzheimer's Association said in 2014 that there were 329,000 unpaid caregivers in Massachusetts. Nationwide in 2014, at least 2/3 of all caregivers were women, and 35% of those caregivers were 65 years of age or older. And 41% of all households had an income of $50,000 or less. At least half of all the caretakers were taking care of their parents. And they estimate that about 250,000 young children and young adults between the ages of 8 and 18 help to provide care in some way. So we're looking at an issue that's going to be an astronomical concern. People who are caretakers have reported high levels of stress, emotional stress. They have 40% of them suffer from depression due to the physical and emotional stress of caregiving. And in 2014, the caregivers spent $9.7 billion on healthcare costs of their own.
So, from my point of view, is there a way for people to identify what the signs and symptoms are of this stress that comes out?
Yeah, Amy, there are some signs and clues that let us know caregivers are feeling stressed or overburdened. And initially, we often see denial about the disease or the effects that it has on the person who's been diagnosed. Often the thinking is, well, I know mom's going to get better. And as the disease progresses, we can see a combination of the following symptoms, which are listed on the next slide. We can see anger at the person who's been diagnosed, anger that no cure exists, or that people just don't understand what's happening. We also can see caregivers socially withdraw from friends and activities that once brought them pleasure. We can see anxiety about having to face another day or what the future might look like. Often the thoughts can be, well, what am I going to do when mom needs more help than what I can provide? I think that the future can look so bleak and worrisome just due to the trajectory of the disease. Like Mary had talked about, we often see depression that can really break one's spirits and affect one's ability to cope. We can often see exhaustion that makes it nearly impossible to complete any necessary daily tasks. We can often see sleeplessness caused by a never-ending list of concerns, such as what if dad wanders out of the house or falls and hurts himself. We also can see irritability that leads to moodiness and can trigger negative responses and actions, a lack of concentration that makes it nearly difficult to perform any familiar tasks like forgetting about appointments, and health problems that really begin to take a mental and physical toll on the caregiver.
It's a long list.
It is, I know.
And I'm concerned that these problems don't go away on their own. Like, what are we going to do about it? So my next question would be, what can caregivers do to manage this stress?
Well, it's interesting you should say that, because the Alzheimer's Association provides a list to give people some idea of what they should be looking at in order to manage their stress. And we can show those items on the next slide. At the top of it is find time for yourself. I think caregivers today, it's so difficult to do that they forget about themselves. And they could utilize respite care. It doesn't necessarily have to be in a SNF.
A skilled nursing facility?
Correct.
Yeah.
It could be a family member who comes every Tuesday, gives you 3 hours of time to go down to the senior center to play bridge. It's just getting and finding some time that's just for you, not in the process of taking care of someone. Then there's becoming an educated caregiver. There are so many websites that can give you information. The Alzheimer's Association provides a 24-hour hotline that you can call up at any time of the day. Take care of yourself. We tend to forget about that part. And we need to remember that diet, exercise, and rest are really, really important to our own health. Manage your own level of stress. Stress causes high blood pressure, abdominal irritation, changes in behavior, and as Amanda was saying earlier, lack of concentration. I think one of the hardest ones is this next one, accept changes as they occur. Mm-hmm. It's very hard to accept the fact that you may not be able to provide care any longer for your loved one, or the appropriate care. Make legal and financial plans now. Plan ahead. Get those healthcare documents done. Get the healthcare proxy, the MOLS, the DNR, whatever it is that your family needs in order to assure that what's going to happen for your loved one is going to happen no matter what may happen to you.
Right.
Visit your doctor regularly. Listen to what your body is saying. If you're losing sleep, if you're getting irritable, if you're feeling overwhelmed, your own health is going to decline. People forget that they're doing their best. The care that you're giving makes a difference. Even though you may feel guilty about the care that you can't provide, what you are providing makes a huge difference. Know what your community resources are. You know, there's a lot that goes on in senior centers. They do seminars. They will have speakers come in to talk about different subjects. You've got your visiting nurse association. You have Meals on Wheels. All of these things can provide a little extra help, and they are resources to reach out to. And the last one, get help and find support. You know, I think what happens is people feel weak
Right.
when they look or have to reach out. There's no weakness involved in talking to friends and family and joining a support group, because everyone in that support group has got the same problems that you do.
All of these ideas are great, and I can hear people say, take time for myself. Now, how am I going to do that? You know, I'm taking care of the caregiver. Well, the PACE program, our elder service plan, is like a perfect place for people to consider because their loved one can come to the day center, they can get a respite to take care of themselves and go to their medical appointments, and then have time for themselves, which is like an ideal situation.
Absolutely.
And we also have, which is fantastic, people should know about it, a support group just for people who belong to the Elder Service Plan for the caregivers. So can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so our support group is held twice a month at convenient times at 2 and 6 o'clock and is facilitated by Mary and myself at the Winthrop PACE Center.
And so we say to people, oh, you have to go to a support group, and people go, yeah, I'm not going to go. It sounds like it isn't something I would like to do, they would think, not me, but they might say that. So what do you think stops people from seeking that support?
I think that some people might find the group depressing, or that people might say horrible things that they may not want to hear. But our support group, like many support groups, is a no-pressure forum where caregivers bring in whatever they want to talk about, fears they face and issues at home, and the group allows caregivers to share these thoughts, feelings, needs, and concerns. The group has allowed caregivers to work through a lot of feelings associated with caregiving, and the group has been a means for caregivers to access information and to problem solve. I think that we've seen the group help caregivers develop realistic expectations for themselves and their loved ones, because as the disease progresses, our loved ones' abilities change and decline. And like Mary talked about, caregivers need to be able to accept and adapt to these changes and what's happening because it's beyond their control. Of course, that's easier said than done, but we've seen that the group and the other group members have really helped caregivers get to this place. I do think that people who ultimately attend the group are positive with the results, especially because they realize that there's other caregivers out there who share similar struggles as them.
You know what surprised me when we got ready for this talk? I thought that your support group would more than likely have all women.
And that is actually
And I was surprised.
incorrect.
Right.
Yes. Our most consistent members have been male caregivers. Yes.
So that's a reach for them, that they've never been in a group like that, support in seeking help.
You know, it was really interesting when we first began. I don't know what Amanda was expecting, and I don't know what I was expecting.
Right.
But, you know, as we went forward with it, each person who joined had to tell their own story. That was what was most important to do. And I think that that's really important for them to get out. Somebody's finally
Right.
going to listen to it. But about 3 or 4 months in, we had this huge aha moment when one of the participants was talking about something that was going on, and one of the other group members said, I know what you're going through.
Right.
And have you thought about trying this? And it was like magic.
Right.
They felt comfortable enough in what was going on to reach out to one another. And
Right.
it didn't require any guidance from Amy and I. It was just phenomenal to
Right.
see.
So this is, interesting. I visited the wellness center one day, and there was a men's group there.
Yeah.
And it was being facilitated by one of our social workers,
Yep.
a male, Frank, and he was running this group. And as people were getting ready for the group, each person appeared to be out for the other person's being. They helped someone sit down properly. You know, one person was on oxygen. They made sure everything was, each one helping each other. So
Absolutely.
It's amazing.
it is.
Yeah.
And we're blessed to be able to have, you know, Mary and Amanda to run our group. So people watching this today will be able to see what the Elder Service Plan is all about, what kind of support group we have. I think as we go forward, this is our new campaign, is to help the caregiver, is to reach out to many people and let them know about caregiver support. That's my goal. So now there are other support groups for other diseases, I'm sure. So tell me a little bit about that.
Pretty much every community hospital or community has a support group program out there. You can get in touch with the hospital that supports your community, and they can put you in touch with a support group. The major illnesses and diseases, the American Cancer Society, the American Heart Association, the Parkinson's Foundation are just a few that I mentioned, and we can put their support groups up on the side. They're out there.
Right.
If you go online, you can find a support group for almost any illness or disease. But I think what you're going to find is the one common thread in any support group is grief and loss.
Right, I know that. What can grief and loss look like for caregivers caring for a loved one with dementia? It's got to be difficult.
Yeah, and it's actually a pretty unique experience that often isn't recognized or acknowledged. Caregivers talk about anticipatory grief, which is the emotional pain of losing a loved one, even before the person's deceased. Many caregivers and professionals refer to Alzheimer's disease as the long goodbye, because you're grieving for the person your loved one once was, while
Right.
they're still physically present, but not cognitively or emotionally.
And have you felt over the years that your ability to help in that support group has made a difference in their lives?
Definitely, definitely. And I think that there's, you know, caregivers need to find healthy ways to cope. So how do you do that?
Right, so how do we deal with grief and loss?
Well, it's important to face your feelings. It's common to feel sad, angry, frustrated, guilty throughout the whole course of the disease. So what's helpful is to talk to someone, whether that be close family and friends or a professional. Like we've talked about, join a support group. It allows caregivers to talk amongst one another and see that others are experiencing similar circumstances, which, as we've seen, has been really powerful and helpful. Since we often see caregivers give up enjoyable activities and companionships, it's great to schedule the time for friends and activities you enjoy, because by taking a step back from your caregiving responsibilities, it may help to relieve some of your stress and grief while strengthening your support networks.
We also have to know that not everyone is going to understand your grief.
Right.
You know, we commonly associate grief with the death of someone, and we may not know that it's possible for you to grieve for the person with a progressive cognitive illness.
Right.
And you need to prepare yourself for what you're going to experience. And you're going to experience loss, and it's not going to be one time. It's going to be over and over again. You experience that loss and grief when your loved one can no longer communicate verbally. You experience it again when they don't remember who you are. And you experience it again when their functional skills are going downhill. And this continues and continues. But what we have to keep in mind is we need to accept and acknowledge those feelings.
Right.
Because they're all a part of the grieving process, and it's normal to grieve.
And like we've talked about, it's important to have realistic expectations for yourself.
Right.
No one's Superman, and as the disease progresses, caregiving just naturally gets harder. So acknowledge you're doing your best and try to learn to accept things that are beyond your control. And I think most importantly, take care of yourself. The best thing you can do for the person you're caring for is to stay healthy, and that includes your physical, mental, and emotional well-being.
Absolutely.
The one thing I found when I spoke to you both, and we came up with our own personal stories, is that you both validated me, and I think that's so important when we just sharing stories. And I think that's such an important point of the caregiving support, is that someone's really understanding what I'm saying, validating my
Exactly.
grief or my loss or my feelings, and then I feel stronger, I'm sure. So if we could, I always try to come away with a takeaway from each segment, an aha moment, we'll say. So let's share your thought about a good takeaway message from this segment today.
Well, I think what I would like caregivers to know is that life is a journey. It's not a destination. And it takes a lot of strength and a lot of courage to make that journey. And they need to know that they're not alone.
Right. And with the Elder Service Plan, they're not alone. Or whatever organization or whatever caregiver support they want to try to go to and attend, that you'll be validated, you won't be alone, there will be others that can understand your grief, your loss, your struggles, and feel stronger. So we want to close by first saying thank you to both of you. This was
You're welcome.
wonderful.
Thank you for having us.
And I know it'll be extremely helpful for the listening audience.
We hope so.
I hope
We
so
do.
too. So if you would like at any time to get more information about our programs, please feel free to call us at 617-568-6377. You can always write to us, call us, whatever you would like, and we would send out the information to you in my little Checking In with Amy bag. I want to just say how thrilled I am to be able to come into your homes and talk about all these wonderful problems, not that they're wonderful, but all these issues that we're confronted with, and that we have the expertise of the members of the Elder Service Plan that can help you. So until we meet again, please stay well, stay warm too. Bye now.
My parents were always very independent. They always seemed to take care of each other. My dad met my mom when she was 13 and he was 15, so they got a lot of practice. It was really difficult when they were faced with health challenges and started to need some help. It was also really hard on me and my brothers. It seemed like every day we were getting calls. They needed to go to this appointment or that appointment, and it became pretty apparent that they really couldn't live on their own without some help, and more importantly, stay healthy. We're lucky to find the Elder Service Plan. Almost immediately after enrolling, we saw some real change for the positive. All their medical appointments were in the same location, including the prescriptions. If they did need to go to see a specialist, then transportation would take them, and that was a big relief for us. My mom attended the PACE Day Center each day where she could really socialize, and she loved that. When they needed services in the home, that was a big help too. And my dad, he'd still call me every day, but not because he had to, because he wanted to. He'd say, "Stevie, you won't believe it, they fixed my teeth. They got me some new shoes today." Just brought some amazing stability to the family. I'll see you a little later today, okay?
Okay.
My name's Lucas Akerley. I'm the activities coordinator for the Elder Service Plan in Winthrop. Today we're doing active parachute games. We have a ball toss with some music. It's fun. Keeping active at ESP is part of our plan to keep you happy, healthy, and independent.
Our mission at the Elder Service Plan is to keep our participants living safely in the community. And we do that in a number of ways, the first being with the physician and the entire team to take care of the person medically. We also try to think creatively and provide other things that they may need, be it shopping service, laundry service. We may provide respite for the caregiver, or even aid visits in our supported housing. We try to be as flexible as possible here in the Elder Service Plan to reach the goal of keeping our participants living safely in the community.
My name is Patty Ferranti, and I'm with the Elder Service Care Program, and I absolutely love it. Just talking about it right now makes me want to cry. Before I was in the ESP, I was always calling my family and having them, pick me up to take me to doctor's appointments and stuff like that. And now now that I'm in ESP, I have the door-to-door service, coordinated care. My doctor always knows I'm coming. They always arrange my appointments. Everything is just so perfect. The program is fantastic. It really is.
Any pain when you do that?
As a physical therapist in the Elder Service Plan, a big part of my job is to help people keep up with their strength and balance. A lot of times I see people after they get injured or some type of surgery, but another part of my job is to make sure people stay active with the regular exercise program so they don't lose the strength and balance they gain back.
What we do is we talk to the person to find out what they want. Do they want to increase their endurance, their strength? Do they want to be able to do things easier throughout the course of their day? We will work with them and develop a plan, and we move forward with it.
We try really hard to keep up with the mission of the program, which is to keep people in the community of their choosing for as long as possible and as safe as possible. Even sometimes just a cane or a walker can make all the difference in making sure people stay safe.
Very central to our plan and what we do here is the patient, the person. And the way we deliver that care is by having a care plan which centers around the person's goals, their choices.
As the medical director for the Elder Service Plan for the last 25 years, I've had the pleasure of watching our program grow enormously. While we started out largely in East Boston, we now serve participants in Chelsea, Revere, Everett, East Boston, and Winthrop. I think one of the real great reasons for our success is our ability to comprehensively coordinate our participants' needs. It's not just seeing the doctor or the nurse. Pharmacists, activities directors, nurses, nurse practitioners, van drivers, dietitians, all of us work together under one roof to keep our members healthy, active, and independent.